How you doing? This is Advite, Brad, and Ryan from Aging 100, and we recently read an article called "An Age-Old Problem: Who is the Elderly" on NPR.org, which basically talks about what it means to be elderly in today's day and age, and how older people are reacting to being called elderly, and what the word really means to them. So, Brad, you want to describe what we're actually going to do?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk around campus, and Ryan here is gonna film while me and Abbott are gonna ask questions to people and see what they answer. So we may get stereotypical responses, we may get aging 100 responses and stuff like that. So let's go find out.
When you hear the word elderly,
People that usually
like is that like the first thing that pops into your mind? Would you say it's like a more positive take on the word or a negative take on the word?
it's like neutral.
Neutral. Cool. When you hear the word elderly, like what's the first thing that pops into your mind?
My grandmother.
Your grandmother?
Yeah, my grandmother, my father.
Like, do you think it's a more positive take on it, or?
Well, I think it's more of a positive take because when you think of elderly, you think of the wisdom, the knowledge that they have, the experiences, the stories, that kind of thing.
Cool.
What age do you consider someone to be elderly?
I think it really depends on experiences and mostly your surrounding.
Okay.
Older person elderly to their face, and what was their reaction?
So my personal experience, I called them elderly when they were behind. I didn't know they were behind me, but then I saw them. I was like, I meant more experienced. I didn't mean to call you elderly.
What did they say?
They said no, because I was asking them because they made like some really good food, and people asked me if I could cook like that, and I said no, I can't cook like old people. They're really, and then someone was like, you hear that? He just called you old. And I was like, I didn't mean old, I meant more experienced. And she's like, oh no, you just put some spice mix and you got it. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, they're forgiving.
Okay, awesome. Like, at what age do you think people should be?
Probably like 65 to 70.
Do you think that's like more subjective, or do you think there should be like, oh, he's old?
I guess like when people retire or when people's social security begins is different.
Do you think the word elderly is politically correct, and why or why not?
I believe the word is politically correct because people like throw out terms about older people these days. When they call them old, they call them fragile, and I think that elder is a proper term to use. It makes it more, I guess, formal.
Yeah.
If someone were to call you old after you reach a certain age, how do you think you would react?
You know what, I think I'd be okay with it. I mean, if it was not in a derogatory sense, it was just being called old, I mean, they're just stating the obvious fact. I mean, I'm old.
So if it was in a derogatory context, would you consider it to be like almost like someone saying derogatory things about your race, or is it something less serious than that?
I wouldn't say derogatory about race, but if they were saying it in a derogatory way, I would take offense to that. I wouldn't be necessarily okay with that.
There's a lot of people like in the United States today that have a negative connotation towards the word elderly. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the word elderly means that people are getting old, which then in turn translates to its end of life sort of scenario. And I do think that some of that's true, but I also think the elderly word can also designate a period of wisdom when you're not in your youth like you fellows are. We've lived a little bit longer. Perhaps we know a little bit more. So it's not always a negative connotation.
Right, and so if someone were to direct the word old or elderly towards you, would you take that as offensive, or how would you react?
I don't think so. Just in general terms, no. If you said, "You old lady," maybe I might. But I think it depends on the delivery of the person who's using those terms.
Okay, so depending on how people ask it, it could have a positive
Exactly.
or negative connotation. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, in conclusion, guys, today when we were interviewing people, both young and old, they all had the same general consensus, and they all believed that aging is not a negative stereotype at all. In fact, it's a positive one, unless someone comes at you in a derogatory way and calls you, hey, you're old, or something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that we talked to had different ideas about how to solve the problem of like the negative connotations for the word elderly, and how can we can more positively relate to older people in our lives, and that's spending more time with them and really taking the time to understand their experiences and what they've been through. And even the more older people that we talked to on campus definitely had the idea that there are positive and negative aspects to the word elderly, and that and that that's kind of like a fact of life, and it's really about our attitude and how we adjust to that. So from Brad, Advait, and Ryan, good day. Shit, do it again. I forgot. How you doing? This is Advait, Brad, and Ryan. Damn it, Ryan. That's how you doing? This is Advait, Brad, and Ryan from Aging 100, and we recently read an article entitled "An Age-Old Problem: Who is the Elderly?" Which basically talks about what it means to be elderly in today's day and age, how the words changed over time, and how older people are reacting to being. I was doing so well.
I'm sorry. Alright, so in conclusion, guys, with everybody we talked to today, everybody pretty much had the same consensus on things, that aging, it's not negative at all. People believe it to be very positive, but in terms of when they get called old in a derogatory way, that's when people start.
That was your fault. You're laughing the whole time.
Everybody we ran into today had pretty much the same consensus, old and young people that we interviewed. They all saw aging as a positive thing, and not a negative way, unless a person came up to them in a derogatory way. And
this is why you're camera guy. This is why you're camera guy.
So the general consensus for you guys, everybody we interviewed today, young and old, they both had the same general consensus on what age.
So in conclusion, don't make fun of the elderly.